France is cracking down on bullying with a newly proposed law which could see school bullies jailed for up to 3 years. If it leads to a suicide attempt, that raises to 10 years and a €150,000 fine. Supporters of the law say it's not about sending children to prison, but avoiding someone's life being ruined by abusive behaviour.
Is this something we should adopt here in the UK? Joining us, anti-bullying campaigner Alex Holmes, who thinks, actually, this law is too harsh. And anti-racism activist Iman Aiton, who backs this idea and thinks a zero-tolerance policy on bullying is what we need. Alex Holmes, you work in anti-bullying. It's the purpose of your everyday life. Why do you think that France is going too far?
Yes, that's right, Susanna. So I was bullied myself at school and it absolutely affected me. But at the Diana Award, the charity I work for, we train young people to be ambassadors. But what I worry about is that actually this is going to perhaps ruin children's futures. So yes, bullying is a big problem. We all make mistakes. And I would hate for a young person to basically be cancelled because of a mistake that they made when they were a young person. And actually, I think it's more about education and it's more about empowering young people to stand up. So I think this goes too far. And we have to remember that bullying is very, very common, but some of these more serious aspects are a lot more rare.
Iman, look, we understand the idea of putting up a wall that tries to deter bullies from being bullies. But surely we know that some bullies are doing it because of learnt behaviour, because of their own troubled background. Do we really want to criminalise some very young people because of that?
I think that, for me anyway, I personally, I don't think that you can compare a bully being given some type of criminal record over a person who's feeling so distressed that they've actually taken it upon themselves to commit suicide. I don't think there is any comparison in my eyes.
But suicide is, of course, the highest level here. This law, the law in France, actually, it stretches much lower along the spectrum of that. I mean, you could still be put 3 years in jail or given a fine for any form of bullying. And while there isn't a specified age limit, it seems to be indicating they're talking secondary school and at universities. So would you really want a 12-year-old who comes from an abusive home and who's been a bully themselves to be penalised under the criminal law?
I think that firstly, we have to understand that bullying has definitely worsened over the years, especially now due to all these different factors. We now have cyberbullying, the recording and sharing of videos. So this was something that was once kind of confined to school and is now kind of starting to feel as if it's a 24-hour ordeal. And so it's clear to me that there are very serious consequences for the victims. And so there should be very serious consequences for the perpetrators. And ultimately, it comes down to, for me personally, again, I'm not a psychologist, but I would assume that it more or less comes down to whether a child can differentiate or has the capacity to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. And I refer to this case just because it moved me. I remember talking about the, I believe it was the Jamie Bulger, yes, Jamie Bulger case. And it was 1993, and it was horrific because from what I remember, it was 2 10-year-olds that killed this 2-year-old toddler. And as far as I'm aware, they knew the difference between right and wrong at 10, and therefore they were prosecuted as a result. And so I think, just like with that particular circumstance, I think there are many incidences where if they are going to be looked at, it needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
I mean,
and I think that...
Iman, I mean, I think a lot of people will agree with you that when it comes to torture and murder, there's, you know, it's very clear where the boundaries are. I think the trouble with talking about criminalising bullying, as horrific as bullying is, you know, one person's bullying is another person's serious criticism or banter or joshing about or being a little bit strict or a little bit stern or perhaps telling someone off. I'm not sure that the boundaries are as clear as the very obvious boundaries in the case you mentioned.
But I think, in all honesty, Susanna, I think that's the response given when we talk about homophobia, transphobia, racism, banter, right? We just had that all over the media. So the fact that that's even brought up is quite ironic, in my opinion. It's clear that if you are a bully and you know what is right and what is wrong, there should be a punishment. This is how we learn as human beings, as toddlers. It's about obedience and punishment. This is how we adopt our moral judgment and moral development. This is a critical part of learning, to ensure that there is a punishment. And if you are bullying and you are very clear about what you are doing, and that has resulted in someone's death, there should be a severe punishment, because there has to be a clearer deterrent. There has to be a stronger deterrent at this point. If prevention is no longer working, if intervention is no longer working, then, if intervention is no longer working, prevention is no longer working, then, of course, at this point, we now need to start to go down the route of enforcement, a stronger deterrent.
OK, that's interesting, because you've clarified there that there should be interventions first, and that someone should be clear about what they are doing. Because my point...
Right? Prevention, intervention and enforcement. I think that's just natural for me as an activist. I would never always say that someone should be condemned. It always starts with preventing, building that awareness. They go hand in hand. Prevention goes hand in hand with intervention. Intervention goes hand in hand with enforcement. You need all three to do the job, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Alex, we've done a poll on Twitter on this, and 75% of people support making this a criminal offence and locking people up at the extreme end of bullying. Do you not think it would be beneficial to have the wall, if you like, the wall of the deterrent that at its extreme, if you continue to bully after the intervention, you could face criminal sanction? Would that not be useful and help deter bullies?
Well, I think it goes back to the fact that schools already have a duty of care. So actually, the schools are responsible for the welfare and the safety of children during the 11,000 hours of their life that they spend at school. So therefore, there are consequences to the behaviour already, and that should be applied. I think that point around the deterrent, well, the best schools that we work with at the Diana Award, where we train young people to be anti-bullying ambassadors who stand up for themselves and their peers, they are the ones that have a culture where bullying is not tolerated. And I really can see in those schools a really positive culture where actually bullying is dumped out. So we need to remember that. And I think the point around cyberbullying, for the majority of the children, actually cyberbullying creates very few new victims. So most children are bullied by someone they know, a familiar relationship, and it usually starts as drama in the playground or in the classroom, and then becomes digital drama online. So I think it's really important and crucial that we focus on the time that children spend at school, and we provide them with education, and we allow them to be reflective and to have things like restorative justice, because we all make mistakes. Adults continue to make mistakes when it comes to their behaviour and attitude. And I would hate, I think, for parents watching this now, who know what it's like when their child becomes perhaps a victim of bullying. But it's even worse often when your child has been involved in a bullying incident. And what you want to do is educate them and support them and help them understand about why what they did was wrong and change their behaviours. And I think if you gave them a criminal conviction, well, that's going to stay with them for the rest of your life. And I think that's really unfair. Even though I was bullied myself at school, I wouldn't want that on the people that bullied me.
Thank you both very much. I mean, two passionate campaigners there, both trying to do the best thing, but with very different views. Do get in touch on your views on this bullying debate, or if you've experienced it, we'd like to see it. Get in touch with us on social media.
Yeah.